Yeah, things are good. Things are good. I had a paper cut on my left thumb, which made video games painful to play, but I did not stop. So, things are great. Today I want to cover the new Xbox and the new Pokémon, coming from two gaming mainstays celebrating their 25th and 30th anniversaries respectively. And my primary question this week is this: when you have these properties decades in, how do you make something new feel more like an event and less like just another one of these? So let's start with that new Xbox. Henceforth, officially, Project Helix. Look at that logo. And that's the entirety of that video, which is weird. 1080p on Twitter, 720p on Facebook, vertical on YouTube. I don't know, they just kind of shot it out there for some reason. And the only other real details come from, of course, Microsoft Gaming's new CEO, Asha Sharma, who still insists on making all of her official communications through tweets. I don't know, I feel like she could be posting this stuff to hogbreath.barf. And people would still go to it. It would still make news. Well, it's here that we learn that Project Helix will lead in performance and play your PC and Xbox games. Now, I was trying to figure out some sort of snarky remark here about how Project Helix probably would not be able to play PC gaming icon Minesweeper, but then I found out that while Steam features many games that have Minesweeper in their title somewhere, there is one bold enough to simply call itself Minesweeper, and it's coming out this month. I do not endorse it. I don't like this whole AI Panda thing. That is not Minesweeper, but you will be able to play this on the next Xbox. And really, the PC integration is not surprising news. That has been rumored and heavily implied.
Delivering you an Xbox experience, not locked to a single store or tied to one device.
Whoa, remember Sarah Bond? That's a blast from the past. Anyway, I'm not surprised that it will lead in performance either. I'm not even surprised that they're still going through with what will most assuredly be another failed project. What I am surprised by is that they're going with the same old marketing trick again. Basically, nobody sells you on the promise of a project like Xbox. You know, sure, there was Project Natal. That was dumb. That was a dumb thing.
Natal is the current code name for a revolutionary new way to play, where the only experience you need is life experience.
But then there was also something called Project Scorpio. See, back in 2016, when it was pretty clear that the Xbox One was not going to compete with the PlayStation 4, hope was renewed with the announcement of Project Scorpio. If you were worried about the future of Xbox, you had to stop immediately, because Microsoft listened.
This product that we're announcing today is absolutely the culmination of all of your feedback.
This console is 100% for you guys. We read the articles, we read the reviews. It's the We Heard You console.
Okay, so that would later be officially renamed Xbox One X, which is obviously plainly less cool than Project Scorpio. However, for the people who bought in, for the true believers, the green bloods, there was a special Project Scorpio edition of the Xbox One X. And buddy, you better pre-order today before it's gone forever. That trailer in particular is fun to go back to because it's doing this thing where it is almost reverentially using these clips of Phil Spencer, who is just talking, trying to make this more like an event, like it's a big deal. This is serious.
2 years ago when we started on this journey, you told us you wanted power.
Again, I'm saying that it was never Xbox fans' fault that they loved Phil Spencer so much. Marketing was using his quotes the same way Nike does in Michael Jordan commercials.
The most powerful console ever made.
Just 3 years after that highly successful Project Scorpio reveal, it was already time for the reveal of a new project, Project Scarlet. And yeah, they said, let's just do that same thing we did 3 years ago.
This is the most immersive console experience ever.
And something I found really funny about watching that whole video again is, you might remember, just last week, I was looking at Asha Sharma's messaging about the return of Xbox and what that meant. And she says, yeah, Xbox is PC, mobile, and cloud, but it starts with console. And she used that same language in the Windows Central interview, starting with console. All right, so here's how Xbox was talking almost 7 years ago. Here's the first thing they say.
When we think about the future of gaming, it's not just PC, it's not just console, it's not just mobile. It's really all of the above.
Okay.
The games you want with the people you want on the devices that you want.
And for us, that starts with our next generation console.
Phew. So that's what's so crazy about this. Nothing has changed. When Asha Sharma says Xbox is back, apparently she just meant back to 2019. And what is so confusing about it is that it's not worth going back to. Those were not glory days. Project Scorpio didn't work. Project Scarlet did not work. But what the heck, everyone? Here's Project Helix. Please retweet. So let's talk about something that will unquestionably be successful no matter what I have to say about it. Pokémon Winds and Pokémon Waves. Revealed just last week with a brand new trailer that, for the most part, plays it by the book. So I watched the last couple of other Pokemon generation reveals. You start to pick up on patterns. Incidentally, they all have these startlingly similar landscape reveals immediately followed up by a windmill shot. Not sure what that's about, but the real similarity is this. They end with the starters. Show me the starters. When you're making a Pokemon generational reveal trailer, they know their audience wants to know first and foremost, what do the starters look like? Even if for some reason you only have 2D illustrations prepared, you gotta show the starters. And just last week, I made some last minute starter predictions. Fire type, I think is gonna look kinda basic, but charismatic. I think the grass type is gonna be an absolute abomination. And I think the water type is gonna try to look cute, but the eyes will be off in some way. And looking at these creatures now, I'd say that was fairly accurate, except that Brout is in no way an abomination and is actually, frankly, my favorite one. And I think that's a consistent strength of how Pokemon introduces starters, is everyone on the planet amongst those three finds one that they like and also one they think is gross and is ruining the franchise. But as I thought more about these three little monsters throughout the week, I started feeling like maybe they're the least impactful new class of starters there have ever been. It's kind of unfazed by the levels of imagination on display here. But consider Gekwa, which I think is a pretty nice design. The eyes are off, but that's intentionally off. This is the one with the big bizarre eyeballs. That's Gekwa's deal. However, this was the water starter just 2 games ago. We just went through this. And I feel like maybe I'm just looking at the effect of this being the 10th Pokemon generation. The message I'm receiving is an exhausted, hey man, what do you want from us? There's only so many water creatures to draw from. So what if we use the same one twice? This one has different eyes. And I would respond, none of us said it had to be a water creature. You keep doing that. You keep doing that. Now, there is one thing presented in this trailer that is a brand new thing for the entire franchise. You'd say islands? You'd say going underwater? No, that's all been done before. But before you even see a snippet of gameplay, Game Freak thought it was important to introduce you to the true abominations, Mr. Windy Chew and Ms. Wavy Chew. Whatever their in-game purpose turns out to be, and they will not tell you yet. Mr. Windy Chew and Ms. Wavy Chew have not been done before. Whatever is happening here is unprecedented. However, it must be said, it is foolish to criticize Pokemon here in its 30th year without ever experiencing a significant gap in popularity. That's rare. It's rare for a video game franchise of this scale to be this well-maintained. And hey, it's a 2027 game. Scarlet and Violet ended up flipping around a lot of long-held conventions that I thought the series would never change, and none of that was apparent in that reveal trailer. So maybe these games are full of groundbreaking new ideas that they just don't feel comfortable telling you about yet. I'm just saying, based off of that reveal. It does appear as if maybe, perhaps, Pokemon Winds and Waves is suffering from just another one of these diseases. Just going through the motions. And so before we end tonight, I would like to applaud another 30th anniversary celebrating video game franchise that is not only still kicking, but somehow unprecedentedly thriving. Yeah, Resident Evil. So just last week, we saw the release of Resident Evil Requiem, aka Resident Evil 9. And this week, Capcom announced they've already surpassed 5 million units. That makes me happy. You have to wonder, how did a dusty old franchise like this pull that off? Let's see how Capcom themselves explain it in the corresponding press release. You see, Resident Evil Requiem was developed using RE Engine, Capcom's proprietary game engine, which allowed the company to deliver visuals in photorealistic detail, including the character's skin, teary eyes, and flowing hair, as well as the translucency of light. Okay, I don't think that was it. But then they follow it up immediately by saying, in addition, the title offers a new game experience for a broad fan base through multiple difficulty settings that accommodate everyone from newcomers to experienced players, as well as allowing players to switch between first and third person perspectives in real time to suit each player's individual play styles. In real time is debatable, but I actually think that's pretty much it. I think Resident Evil Requiem does a great job of new things and gruffy old things. And yeah, I think perspective options is kind of huge in this case. And I find it interesting on the marketing side that completely conversely to Pokémon, Requiem's initial trailers for maybe too long focused only on what is new and what is different.
そういうレオンってそんなみんな見たくないやろっていうところで、じゃあホラーと食い合わせ悪いよなっていうのがやっぱりありましたけど。
Look, I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. That won't work in every case. Imagine watching an entire trailer that is just Mr. Windy Chew and Ms. Wavy Chew hamming it up for 2 minutes straight. Wouldn't work in that case. But what I am saying is that Resident Evil Requiem succeeded in feeling more like an event than just another one of these.
Thank you, Capcom!
And that's Delayed Input. I'll be back next week. Until then, thanks for watching. So I've got a couple of obligatory updates for you. Firstly, do you remember last year when Bungie stole some art from an artist and then did a bad job apologizing for it?
Well, before we get into that, Joe Cross has some sort of topic that he wants to talk to you all about.
Yep. Thanks, Joe.
It turns out they did ultimately do a pretty good job apologizing for it. There was an agreement that was arranged. And then I saw this Reddit post which points out that Anti-Real made it into the freelance portion of the marathon credits as visual design consultant. It's another happy ending to another sloppy Bungie mistake. And then secondly, it was just 2 weeks ago on Delayed Input that the topic was unsalvageable projects, and Highguard had just announced that there's some cutbacks on their team. And at that point, it would have been really easy to just say everything was completely over, but we all agreed that we should try to stay positive and give them the benefit of the doubt and hope for the best. Well, this week, Highguard announced that the game's servers will shut down on March 12th, aka next week. And maybe I'm just overly peeved about this. It's probably just me being overly peeved. Look at all these social media platforms Highguard is on. But you'd never know the game is canceled on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. Not even on the dedicated news tab of their website. No. This is, for some reason, another Twitter exclusive. Maybe it's so they can scroll down and say, wow, 8-point-something million views. We really went viral. Now, obviously, we should exhibit sympathy for any large team of game developers who are just trying to make a fun video game. However, it is also objectively wild that this bad boy had 2 million players and then didn't make it 2 months. And look, you can goose and fake and buy views, likes, and follows, but 2 million players truly represents almost 2 million people who gave this game a shot and then said, no more, no thank you. In that sense, I find Highguard fascinatingly unlikable. Likeable enough to be invited in, likeable enough to be given a chance, but then, when they started hanging out, something went wrong. Highguard got ghosted 1.999 million times. I'm Highguard.